Hello everyone, Frank here, and I'm glad that you're here. In this video, we're going to take a look at Microsoft Teams, not just as a way to have remote meetings, but also as a collaboration and a project management platform. It's a very powerful tool. If you're one of my students, then I might be asking you to watch this video as part of the orientation for an upcoming remote class, or an in-person class, or a hybrid class. And if you're not one of my students, then I still think you'll get a lot out of this video because we're going to take a look at many aspects of Teams. As such, it's a little bit of a longer video, so I'll make sure to put a table of contents in the description down below. So if there's a specific feature that you're looking for, you can quickly find it. And you can share this video with other colleagues so that you can collaborate and work together much more effectively using Microsoft Teams. So let's go take a look at Microsoft Teams. There are several parts to this video. First, we're going to have to download and install Microsoft Teams in order so that it's running on our system. After that, we'll set up our account. We'll make sure our settings are all configured for us. We'll go into a meeting. We'll learn how to participate in a meeting. Then we'll learn how to work with the platform outside of a meeting for collaboration. And then finally, we'll look at how you can set up your own team and create some fun add-ons. There are a couple ways that I can use Microsoft Teams. You can use it completely online by going to teams.microsoft.com and logging in with your account. Now, using it through a web browser is good. You can use it through a web browser, but I do find it's a little bit better to download and install the desktop client or the iOS Android version in a mobile environment. So to download it, if I go to microsoft.com/teams/download, I'll get the download page. And when you go to the download page, you can download it for your desktop. And if you scroll down, you can see that I can choose to download Teams for Home, which is really for personal use. It's for families. It's for small groups and organizations. If you're working with it in a corporate or an academic environment, then you'll want to download Microsoft Teams for work or school. Now, work and school are very similar in terms of the functionality of Teams, but the school one has things like shared notebooks, class notebooks, and the work one often has a few features that might not be appropriate in an academic environment. So for example, I'll be switching between the two, and I'll let you know when I'm using a work versus a school type of feature. I'll start with the work version because I have some things like avatars and immersive environments. They're kind of fun. So I can download Teams. You can also get the mobile app for Android and for iOS. I'm going to go into the Teams app for work or school, and then I'm presented with an option, several options. I can download the 64-bit version. That's for more modern operating systems, and most likely that's what you're running. I can also download the 32-bit version if I'm using an older computer, older version of Windows. And then there's this thing called the ARM64. ARM64 is things like the Apple M1, M2 chip. They're using ARM64 architectures. So a lot of times, if I have a Mac and I want to work in a Windows world, I'll run a virtual machine. I have videos here on the channel where I talk about running Windows 11 on a Mac as a virtual machine using software called Parallels. That's beyond the scope of this introduction to Teams video, but the point is, if you are running an ARM-based version of Windows, such as Windows 11 as a virtual machine on a Mac M1, M2 chip, then you can download that through the virtual machine and it'll run just fine. In my case, I'm running this on Windows, so I'm going to choose the Windows 64-bit and it's going to download for me. Now, when I download it, I can go into my downloads or I can just open the file directly. It's going to go through the installation procedure to install Teams on my system. There is a version of Teams called the New Teams and the other version's called Classic. There's kind of a transition period right now. I'm going to use New Teams, which I've already installed. So rather than reinstall it or install it for the first time, I'm just going to launch Teams. So if you have never installed Teams before, you'll go through the installation procedure. It's fairly straightforward. Or if you have the classic version of Teams, you'll have the option of installing the new version. When I go into Teams, it'll depend where I left off last time. So you can see here I am in my calendar. I've logged into Teams as Bruce Wayne. So that's the last account that I used to log in. If you haven't ever logged in before, it'll prompt you to log in. And it's very important that you log in with your institutional account. You do not want to log in with your personal email address, such as a Gmail or a Hotmail account. You want to log in with your school or work address. The reason for this is twofold. First of all, chances are you were added to different teams using that institutional account. Second, some of the features do not work with personal accounts, so you need to be a member of the organization in order to take advantage of the features. So again, very important that if you're at school, you log in using the school account. It's usually going to be something like first name, last name at school, or it's going to be a corporate account, first name or last name, whatever it might be, at company name. So it's very important to use your institutional account. So I've logged in as Bruce to my work account. So I'll use the work account a little bit here. So you'll notice that I'm in my calendar here and I have a couple of meetings here. So there's one that's been canceled, so I'll just remove that from the calendar. And you'll notice that there is a meeting, Let's Learn Teams. I'm going to right click and I'm just going to go in and accept that meeting. So if I accept that meeting, it's going to put that in my calendar, and then it'll do things like synchronize with my Outlook calendar, remind me of the meeting. So if you're taking an online class, chances are you'll see all of your class sessions there, and you can go in and accept one or the entire series of them, and then you'll get reminders that they're there. You'll notice that it's also 6 p.m. that the meeting starts, and right now it's 6 p.m. So I could join the meeting. This could be in the future as well, and you can still sometimes join it early. Generally, that's not considered a really good idea. Join just before the meeting occurs. The organizer of the meeting can modify some of these settings, but if they don't, you do have the possibility of joining early and then just sitting there waiting until the class starts. So you do have those options. So that's an example of logging in and seeing your calendar. We're going to come back to the meeting in a moment. First, let's take a look at the account settings themselves. There's some interesting things in here. So to configure my account, if I go in to Bruce Wayne here, a couple of things. You'll notice that it says I'm currently in a meeting. Well, I'm not. I'm available. Notice if I drop this down, I can choose a status message. And then I can choose how long I want that status message. So maybe I'm going to be available for the next 2 hours, and now that status message will show me as being available for the next 2 hours. I can set a work location. So whether I'm working in the office or remotely, so maybe I'm working remote, and I can even put a status message here. So I could say, thanks for contacting me. And then I could say something like, I'm not working in the evenings or whatever the case may be. And when somebody sends me a message, I can show them this status message. And then in terms of clearing it, I could say, this week. So this is my status message for this week. I'm at a conference, whatever the case may be. So you can go in there and you can set the status message, and you can also schedule out of office. So if you're not available, you can schedule the times that you're not in your office. So you can set that up as well. I'm going to pop back in here because there's a little trick in here that often confuses folks. So you can see the availability, the working remotely, set status message and such. But notice I have this view account. This is not my Teams account. This is going to be my Microsoft account, my work or my school account. So we don't make a lot of changes here. This is more like what devices have I used to log in. So this is my institutional account. What I want to do is I want to go in, see where it says BW for Bruce Wayne. I do not have a profile picture. So anytime I'm in a meeting or anything I do, all the other people are going to see are my initials, BW. What we really should do is change that to something that's going to allow people to recognize me when my camera's not on. Now, in my case, I'm going to have some fun here. I'm just going to go in and I'm going to upload a new image. You should upload an image of your face so that people can associate a face with a name. But for Bruce, I'm just going to go ahead and put the bat symbol there. Now, it's better to have your face because this is what will appear on people's screens when you don't have your camera on. So you want to make sure that's nice and clean. You can see I now have Bruce Wayne has the bat symbol. The other thing when it comes to configuring your accounts, your settings, is if you go into the ellipse here, you'll notice you can cast this onto another screen. You can get help here. There's some training in here. You can zoom in and out. You can download the mobile app. It'll give you a link there. You can switch between the new teams and classic teams. But a big thing here is the settings. And we've already gotten a little bit of a preview of settings because we had the out of office reply. But underneath settings, this is how you can configure a lot of different aspects of your team environment. So underneath general, you can set it to automatically start teams when you start your computer. We can have any type of content that I open, either open up in my main window. So if I play a video, it plays in the main window, or I can have it create a whole new window and play it in the new window. One of the things I do like is I like to have my chats. By default, it's in the main window. I kind of like to have my chats break out into a separate window. So if I'm chatting with 3 or 4 people, I can kind of keep them separate. That's really a preferential thing, but I do like to have my chats in new windows. That's the out of office that we just talked about and we saw. I can have suggested replies. So it uses a suggestion engine. If somebody says congratulations, it suggests thank you. Things like that. And spell check, that's an important one for me. I don't know about you. There are a lot of different settings and I'm not going to go through them all because there's just so many. But you can explore this. So for example, you can go in and look at which accounts you have. You can set privacy here so you can block certain contacts. If somebody doesn't have a caller ID, you can block them. Generally, you're not going to have to do this in a school environment. It's usually a bigger issue if somebody has to be blocked. You can have read receipts in there. So if somebody reads your message, you can participate in surveys from Microsoft Teams. How are you enjoying Teams? Would you recommend Teams to a colleague? You can go in. There's a lot in here you can do. Underneath here, one of the things that's handy is you can do end-to-end encrypted calls if it is set up with your client. So what I mean by this is that if your IT department or your school has set it up, notice it's grayed out for me. You may wind up with certain settings grayed out. And that means that it has not been enabled by your IT department. So I have not enabled encryption to this institutional account, this corporate account, so you cannot put end-to-end encryption. If this was an actual real business, I would probably do that. I would probably go in and configure it for encryption. One of the things here is by default, optional connected experience is turned off. If you have the ability, turn it on because it will allow you to do things like cut and paste objects into your environment. So you can cut like an image and paste it in. If it's grayed out, just means that your school or a company has not enabled it. You might want to send a IT request to see if they'll do that for you. This is a very useful one that's off by default. Okay, so you can go notifications, how often do you want to be notified, so on and so forth. I won't go through all of these like I said. The appearance is a big one. So for example, you can make it sort of a comfy experience. You can make it compact. You can show messages. You can set different themes like dark theme. A lot of people like the dark theme. So if you want it in the dark theme, I tend to just follow the operating system. One handy one though is high contrast. So high contrast makes it a lot easier to read things if you have visibility issues. So I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to follow the system defaults and we'll keep it at that. You can change language. Another thing that's neat is that you have some sign language view in here. You can do things like translate messages into a different language. So if you speak a different language, you can use Microsoft translation services. So if I type, hello, did you get your assignment in on time? It could translate into a language that was more applicable for you. And then you could go into TTY mode if you need that as well. Lots of things around files and links and calls and captions. Let's go to captions and transcripts. So underneath here, you can do things like profane words get filtered in a meeting. That makes sense. So you can do transcription. So, identify if you speak and your microphone is picked up, you get identified. Things like this. Some things like recognition, you have to enable that at the back end, voice and face recognition. But the point here is that by going into this ellipse, you can go into settings and you can make these changes. You can only change your profile picture by clicking on your profile picture, which will affect anything that you're using in that institutional account. And again, I would recommend a face And then again, the account here is your Microsoft or your institutional account, not your Teams account. Okay, so you have some options there, and I'd invite you to explore that. Let's go to the calendar and let's look at the next big thing when it comes to Microsoft Teams, and that's participating in a meeting. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to join this meeting. So I've just joined this meeting as Bruce Wayne. So I'm in this meeting. I haven't quite joined yet, actually. What I need to do is determine what camera that I might wish to use. So if I turn my camera on right now, it's going to be blank because I'm actually using the camera to record. So I've got another system process is using the camera. But when you go in, you can hit the little gear here, and that's where you can choose what audio device you want for your speaker. Most often this is going to be either a set of headphones or this is going to be your laptop speakers or your computer speakers. Then, in my case, I'm using a Nearhub S55 interactive whiteboard, and so I'm using the speakers of the whiteboard in order to play any Teams meeting stuff. I can go in and choose the microphone. I'm using a remote microphone to the camera, so I've chosen that. But if you have a different microphone, you can choose whichever microphone you may wish to use, whatever you have configured for your system. I can go in and there's spatial audio. I can turn that on. So that makes the sound quite nice when you're speaking. I can do noise suppression if you know, in this case here, it'll put music and neither here nor there. If you have music playing, you have to put it on low noise suppression so the music comes out. But I generally just leave that to automatic. And then the video. In my case, I am using an external camera link, but you could change this to your integrated camera. So it could be the camera that's part of your laptop, or it could be an external camera. I have a lot of different cameras. Mirroring your video is helpful because things like text and that sort of thing can be useful there. You can adjust your brightness. You can use soft focus. I generally don't use soft focus because, you know, who needs it? I'm just joking. So soft focus can go in and make the lighting less harsh. So that's basically the configuration settings. I can also go in and have different effects and avatars. This is very useful. So avatars would be like a little character. So I have another video here on the channel where I talk about Mesh meets Meta, where I use a VR headset and join a Teams meeting. That's pretty cool, but most academic environments don't support that. So they don't support it at the back end, either from a licensing standpoint or from a configuration standpoint. But if you have the option to do an avatar, you could create an avatar. And the big one, though, would be video effects. So video effects are quite useful. So to do that, I have to turn on the camera. So again, my camera is being used by another process. So I will turn it on, and it thinks that it's turned on, even though it's going to be this black screen. But I can go in and do things like I can set different types of backgrounds. So you can see that some of these backgrounds are moving backgrounds. And if you go into the backgrounds here, you can go into different types of things like a standard or a portrait blur. So that kind of creates a blur around you. Right now I have a cat sleeping next to me, Blossom, one of the studio cats. And you know, if she starts jumping around on the shelf behind me, I could put on the blur and then you wouldn't see her, which would be a shame. Blossom's a beautiful cat. You'll see her eventually. And if you go in here, there's a bunch of video filter effects. So you can go in here. There's a whole bunch of different backgrounds you can use. There's a whole bunch of different filter effects in here. I'll often go into the show all here. And down at, up at the top here, notice that you can actually add your own. So if you have, for example, a picture that you want to have, or an MPEG, you can see here that you can use JPEGs, PNGs, BMPs, all sorts of different types of files there, and you can put that as a background. Sometimes schools or institutions will have a whole package of backgrounds you can download that are representative of the offices that you work in. But it comes with a whole bunch of fun ones in here. You will not have all the same ones that I have because I've uploaded some here. Some of these are from conferences that I went to. So, you know, it's whatever you upload will be there. And then you can just do blurs and you could have, you know, no background. Generally, I'm in a studio, so I don't have a background that I'll put up because I created a physical background, right? You can also go in here, instead of backgrounds, you can also go into filters. So you can go into different types of filters. Those can be a lot of fun. You have to download them and use them. Snapchat and different styles and such. There is also, if you do have a green screen, I have one over in the corner on the side wall here. Then you can set your green screen settings. That's a little more advanced. I mean, nobody's going to expect that. Basically, a camera so people can see you is helpful, and then making sure that you've gone in and you've changed your profile picture to a face. That's going to get 99% of the work you need to do. Finally, I'm going to join this meeting, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to also join the meeting, but as Frank. I'm going to join on my phone here so that we have 2 participants in the meeting. So I'm going to pop in here. Frank's going to join the meeting, and on my phone, I'm going to make sure that my video and my audio is off, so that actually I'll put my video on. So I'll look into the camera here, and you can see, turn my speaker off just so that I'm not getting feedback. So you can see I've joined the meeting, and now I'm waving, and you can see that it's showing up on the big screen. It's showing up on what I'm recording. I'm just going to turn that camera off there, and I won't go through the whole iOS setup. We're just going to work on the desktop here. So now we have a participant, Frank, with a microphone muted. If I hit the ellipse here, I can pin this for me, or I can spotlight it for everyone. And I have myself, again, same thing. I can hide myself here as well, but you can see that 2 participants are here, and both of them do not have their cameras on, so both of them will just have their profile picture. You can see that the Frank one is an actual picture of myself, so that's useful for people. When I turn off my camera, they can still identify who I am, who I look like. And now we're going to go to this top menu here and look at all of the different things I can do in a meeting. So first of all, up here, I can set my status. So in this case here, we have data encryption on here, so I can see that. Underneath here, there's nothing here. It just shows that that'll be populated if I'm doing presentation such. These are the main menus here. First of all, I can turn my camera on and off. I can turn my microphone on and off. There's no need for me to have the microphone on here. Actually, you know what? I will turn it on for a reason later on. I can share off the meeting information, right? So I can share off, I can share objects in the meeting. So I could share my screen. I could share a specific window. I could share a whiteboard. I can even share PowerPoints. So I can go in, there's lots of different things. I can upload a PowerPoint here. You can see that Bruce was talking about the Batcave explanation whiteboard at one point. I can browse my computer for a PowerPoint and load it into the team meeting. So lots of things I can share. And here's a key here as well in the meeting. Let's say I'm sharing a video. You want to make sure you include computer sound. Otherwise, if you're playing a video, that audio will not be shared. I see this all the time with, say, students that are doing a presentation and they've embedded a YouTube video or something in their presentation. They're playing the PowerPoint. They go to play the presentation. There's no audio. It's because this little button by default does not include computer sound. Be aware of that. So that's these 3 buttons here: camera, mic, and sharing. The other thing that we can do is we can chat. So underneath chat, I can go in and I can say hello. So I'll say hello, and that will go to all participants in the meeting. I will have received the chat as Frank over here, and then I can go into the chat and I can respond back, hello. It's not the most exciting, conversation in the world, but by going in and saying hello back, you'll see that Frank's responded hello, and you can see, oh, I think that's a great thing to say. So you can go into this response here. You can put different emotions on here. You can even go in if you want and you can change it. Let me grab this here. And I can go and find different reactions here. So, oh, there's Clippy. Good old Clippy is in there. So I can put that in there. Bruce Wayne showed me the Clippy. I can go into the response that Frank gave me, and I can do things like I can reply. So if you have a lot of people chatting, then what you can do is have, you can capture a specific response or a specific message and reply to it. You can also go to the ellipse where you'll get more options. So if I go into more options here, I can forward it, copy it, share it to Outlook, translate it. So let's say if I want to translate, what did Frank just say? So I can go ahead and I can do a translation of that, and I can say, let's go and translate it in English, or I can go into my settings and I can choose another language to translate it into. I don't really want to do that. I'm just going to go back into the meeting. Okay, so I can go in and do that. Okay, so that's participating. That's the chat. I can see who's in the meeting, And as an example, I'll just raise my hand. So I'm Bruce. Notice that when I see who's in the meeting, I can see that someone has done something, raised their hand. And when I go in there, I can see it's Bruce that raised his hand. Bruce can come in and lower his hand, and you'll see that it changes that as well. So you can see who's in the meeting, and you can share the invite to the meeting as well. Okay, I can go in and I can react. So let's say, and you've watched the Bruce here. Bruce is saying thumbs up, and little thumbs up comes up. I can go in, oh, didn't want to raise my hand, put that down. I can go to react and I can clap. So you can see Bruce is now going to clap. So you can see some reactions in there. The view is quite interesting because the view is going to depend on how many participants you have in a meeting, as well as whether you've enabled certain features. I'm using my corporate account here, so I have a couple licenses. So I'm actually have some options here that you might not see in an academic environment. First of all, the gallery is the default view. You can just see the two participants. Any other participants will appear on the top or the side of the screen, depending on where you'd like them. I can focus in just on the speaker. So if I focus on the speaker, whoever's speaking, they get focused in on. Frank is here in the center and Bruce is up here. So the next menu I have is the view menu. Now the view menu allows me to determine what I see on the screen. Gallery view is the default. You can see myself and you can see Frank. We're both here. If there's a lot of participants, it'll put little thumbnails of either their profile picture or their video camera feed. I can go in here. I can go into my view here and I can go into speaker. So now the speaker view's here. And you notice that I can go in and I can do things like spotlight that particular speaker. If I hover over the image here, it'll give me the status messages and such. So you can see here, and I can see that I've shared a post here on Mesh and such. So you can see I've got my work hours in there, same time zone as me. So you can get information. You can go to LinkedIn and you just get a profile of them. If I go into view here again, there's together mode. Together mode is kind of interesting. What it does is it provides a virtual environment and then it green screens the area around me of my webcam and then it puts me in that environment. You'll notice that underneath the scenes, 50 people could be in the auditorium, two types of auditorium. This is a small meeting, so maybe I want to go through and I want to say, let's all go into a small, there's 5 in here, a little coffee shop. So we're all going to meet in a virtual coffee shop. So it'll put this coffee shop. And you might be, well, where are you? Well, if I go into a remote device here with a camera, here I am on my iPhone. Notice that I appear in the coffee shop. It's cropped out a green screen around me. It works best with computer cameras, but you can see that if we all had our cameras on and we're giving video feeds, we could have up to 5 people in this coffee shop. So we have that. It's not a mode that I use a lot, but it's a fun one. I also, if a large gallery, if I have a large amount of participants, that becomes available. I can focus on content. Focus on content means if somebody's showing a PowerPoint, I can get rid of distractions by just having the PowerPoint take up the majority of my screen. So that's a great thing to do as well. So you can focus on content, and then that's a toggle switch. So there's no content currently being shared, nothing to focus on. This immersive space, I have a video on the channel called Mesh Meets Meta, where I talk about VR and having VR immersive spaces. You won't generally get that in an educational environment because it's based upon the licenses that you have for Microsoft Office, and I've got it configured in my corporate environment. The point here, though, is that you have different views and different ways of seeing how things appear on your screen. You can even go into the view here and you can go into more options where you can do things like turn off incoming video. So I have a cat right here. That's Blossom, so we'll hop up here. Sometimes that might be distracting. You can turn off incoming video even if the person has their camera turned on. You can say, I don't want that, and turn off the incoming video. You can also go full screen. That's self-explanatory. Underneath notes, you can go in and you can get notes for the meeting. This is really handy if you want somebody to go in and keep notes. Notice that this here it's got an icon here. This is actually a loop component, so I can add the topic and the name, time allocated. We can throw that in there. You can add meeting notes. You can do follow-up tasks, and that'll be summarized at the end of the meeting. You can add different apps in here. I won't go into a lot of detail right now on this, but effectively you can add things like surveys and different types of apps where you can have those as part of your meeting. That can be quite useful. And there's even a more button, the 3 ellipse here, and you can go in and do things like record and transcribe. This is more applicable to the organizer of the meeting. A lot of times I'll have students that will go in and they'll want to do that. When I organize the meeting, I can make that not possible, but generally speaking, you should let the organizer or the instructor be in control of what is and is not recorded and transcribed. You can go into meeting info, just tells you about the meeting. You can go into different types of effects and avatars. We talked about that. You can go into language and speech, where you can turn on live captioning or even turn on a speaker coach to help you through the language. Let's turn on live captions. So I'll go ahead and I was playing with some different languages here. So I'll confirm that we're going to have English captions. And now Frank's going to talk. So I'll go into Frank. I'll turn on the audio. Hello there. I hope you're doing well. I got a little bit of an echo there. I'm going to turn off the audio here just so that it doesn't make a sound. Hello, Frank here. I hope you're doing well. And we can turn off the audio. And you can see that I still have the audio from Bruce here. So it didn't do a good job of attributing the audio to Frank, but you can see that it is doing a good job of transcribing what's happening in the conversation. So I can go here and I can turn off that transcription, turn off live captions. So live captions can be useful. I guess I'll show you if you speak another language and you go into language here, turn on live captions. I can go in here and I could change it to a different language. I'll change it to German. So I'll say update that. You can go in and change the style and the height and so on. And if I go in, I can make it large. So I can go in there, position at the bottom. Position at the bottom, and I can say the font size is large. I hope that you understand everything that I'm saying. It's being translated into German. So we can go there and you can see that that's being translated into German. I'll put it back into English, and now we're back into English. So we'll go in here and I can go into language and speech and turn off live captions. You can also go into the meeting here under language and speech, and you can turn on your speaker coach. So what this is, the speaker coach will begin listening to you, and as you speak, it's looking at the way that you're speaking, it's looking at your tone, it's looking at your enunciation. It's basically really good if you are presenting in a meeting. Let's say you're sharing a PowerPoint or you're sharing some sort of content, doing a presentation to the class. By turning on the speaker coach, once you've finished, it's going to give you an analysis of your speech, whether you used a lot of ums and ahs and different types of pauses or how that worked for you. So I'll go in here, go into language, turn off the speaker coach, and it's stopped, right? So I can turn it on anytime that I want. But what I did do there is it did generate, and it'll send it, in my case to Bruce, a private note saying, here's an analysis of your speech. Okay, so that's handy. You can also do phone calls and such in there. Underneath settings, you can do things like device settings, check your call health. That sometimes if you're dropping or it seems like it's not really working, you can check your call health to see if this is a good call, right? You can see what your bit rates are, round trip time. This is more for troubleshooting if you need to do any call health. So there we go. There's your meeting. I can go in and I can leave the meeting. So notice I can leave it. If I'm the organizer, I can cancel the meeting for everybody. So I'm going to leave the meeting, and I've now left that meeting. So I'm back in Teams, and now we're going to take a look at some of the collaborative features that Microsoft Teams offers. So the meeting we just talked about, you can go and review that section. But now you'll see that I was just in a meeting. I received an activity report. My speaker coach report was available, and it's looking at things like my pace, my inclusiveness, any type of filler words like ums and ahs, intonation, monologue, if I'm speaking very monotonous. I can go repetitive language, and you can see that, I spent, less than a minute speaking. It thinks that well, that's good. It was outstanding. That's a rare treat. But you can go in there And I can even have it, if I'm trying to improve my speaking, I can now automatically have it always go whenever I'm in a meeting to help improve my speaking and help me become a better speaker. So I can go in there. So that's a handy thing to have. But that's not all that we have with Microsoft Teams. The key element to Teams are the menu items down here. You'll notice that activity will let me know what activity is occurring. I can have chats without having a meeting. So I can go in and I can have chats with different people in my organization, right? I can go in and I can have different teams that I'm a member of. So you can see that Bruce here is a member of a few teams. Bruce is a member of the Great Divide Hike Trail, or Great Divide Trail Hike, as well as the Coastal Hiking Club. We can have meetings in here. These are referred to as channels. I shouldn't say meetings. We can have channels in here. These are different focused areas of conversation. So by going into the channels, even though I'm not in a meeting, I could go into things like my maps and navigation, and I could put a post in here. So I could put a post in here. Maybe this is 2 o'clock in the morning and I get a great idea. We should take a map on our hike, right? So we should have a map. And then we could go into, we should take typing lessons. And then I could put a message in there, a map. Obviously not a great message here, but notice I can make it bold, get all the formatting in here. I could add a video in here. So there's all sorts of formatting I can put in here. And I can also go in and I can attach a file. I can add a YouTube video. So let's say, for example, I find a really great YouTube video on how to use Microsoft Teams. I could go in here and I could post it so that everybody could watch that video whenever they get a chance, so on and so forth. So there's lots of things that you can do. You post that, and now that's posted, and we can have conversations. That's a very powerful part of Microsoft Teams. Just go into Teams, choose the team. You can go into whatever team you're a member of, and you can go into whatever channel you're a member of, and you can have conversations when people aren't together in a meeting, when they aren't together in a physical space. This is a great way to keep the conversation and the knowledge flowing. We also can see our calendar. You saw that earlier. So this is a pretty sparse calendar. Bruce isn't a very busy guy, but you can see what meetings you're scheduled for. Your calendar will appear here. You can create new meetings. So lots of things you can do there. You can place audio calls through your system. You can even get files to and from your cloud storage, your OneDrive. Underneath the ellipse, you can add other apps in here. So for example, if this was a corporate account, maybe I want to put the Shifts app here. So I could actually, as a manager, I could create a team called, Retail Space, and then we could have conversations, new product promos, new bonus incentives. We could have all of that stored in Teams, and then I could have the Shift app there where I put people's shifts in place, and people could request to swap shifts and see who's working and all of those great things. One of the apps I use a lot is Microsoft Whiteboard, which is a drawing, and I have videos here on the channel about Microsoft Whiteboard. There's so many things I could go. There's literally dozens, if not hundreds of apps that I can put in there, but that shows you the power of Microsoft Teams. You can also get to the apps by clicking this plus button, and it brings you to the app marketplace. Look at all the different apps that you can put in here. Canva's a great one, so I could add the Canva app in there, and then I can actually do graphic design right within Microsoft Teams. So I could go in, sign in, I could take a tour, whatever the case may be, right? So you can go in and get an understanding. I just did that casually. So underneath Microsoft Teams, you can see activity. You can have chats outside of the meetings. You can go in, you can see what teams you're a member of, and then you can choose different channels in those teams, and you can place calls and so on. This is a very powerful way to collaborate using Teams. And a lot of times, people just think of Teams as a meeting platform. This is actually, in my opinion, more powerful than just the meetings, because this is something you can use to share and have collaborative information. But I want to show you just a couple more things, and then we'll go from there. So if I go into Teams, notice that I can go in and I can join or create a team. If I've created a team, I can go into the team information and get a code for the team, share that code, and people using that code can then join my team. A lot of times what will happen is I'll add people from my organization to the team, and then they will automatically be joining by clicking the button. But I could create a team as well. So if I go in the plus button here, let's create a new team. Now I'm on a corporate platform right now as opposed to a school platform, and I have the permission to create teams. So look at all of the different types of teams I have as part of my business institutional teams client tenant. If I was in an educational institution, I would have things like classes. I would have things like different peer groups that I could create. I could create communities of practice. Here, these are more applicable to business. So I could go in and create an outdoor expeditions. That's a custom one that I created. I could go in to manage a project. I could go in to manage an event. So let's say, for example, I have a store and I want to go in and manage the store. So here I can have a retail store. It'll create all of these channels, a general, a learning, shift handoff, store readiness, and it's going to put in all of these different apps in here. Notice, for example, it'll put in the Shifts app in here, right? Tasks and a wiki, a knowledge base. So this would be great if I had a store. I'll make this, people need permission to join, or public, not public like the world, public that's in your organization. So let's say anybody in my organization is here, and I can call this gift shop. So this is the gift shop for my museum, and I'll call this the gift shop team. So now I have a retail space, the gift shop team, and it's going to create a team. Anybody in my organization can join it, or I can make it private and just invite the gift shop employees in here. It's going to create this team with all those channels, with all those apps, and that's the beginning of me being able to then customize it for sharing shift information, sharing information about products, sharing information on training. So you can really see that by using a team and a template for a team, I can really start getting some very powerful collaboration occurring. I could set meetings. Maybe we have a weekly online meeting for the gift shop employees. I can do that as well. That's how you create a team. Now I have a team for my gift shop employees. You can see I've got different channels in here. I've got things like shift handoff. I can look at files and notes. Underneath general, I can look at our store. You can see that I've got a lot of functionality, and I've just begun to tap into the power of Microsoft Teams. It sits on top of SharePoint, so I can embed websites in here and so on. But my cat Blossom has woken up, and she has her friend Peanut that she wants to go and find so they can do some playing around. If you want to comment down below on any other topics on Microsoft Teams that you'd like to see more information on, or you can subscribe to the channel and just see videos as they come out. Make sure to give this video a like if it was useful. That's a lot of different things to do. Any or all of those would be great. We'll see you in the next video, and I hope you enjoy using Microsoft Teams for collaboration, communication, and really helping you work together, either remotely or even in person.